Sorry I'm talking so low, but I'm in my backyard, and I'm really self-conscious about my neighbors hearing me. It's fucked up. There are a lot of people that are annoyed with conspiracy theorists, and they don't even listen to what they have to say. But I'm hoping that after this video, people will start to understand a little bit about why conspiracy theorists exist. And there is a history of governments and businesses not behaving in a way that, breeds trust, or in behaving in a way that's not in our best interests. So in this video, I'll talk a little bit about the definition of conspiracy theories, and show you some that actually have come to pass, that were actually real. And it'd just be nice in this time of division, for people not to be against each other, to kind of see each other's perspectives, because I know conspiracy theorists get a lot of hate, and they're easily dismissed, but you know what, the opposite is true too, like even the ones that don't believe in conspiracy theories, they got some valid perspectives as well. So where's the middle ground? Where do we meet? That perfect, spot where they both realities collide and are probably more representative of the truth. Conspiracy theories are centered around the idea that groups of people are capable of secretly carrying out a plan to get what they want. I'm going to describe some conspiracy theories that actually turned out to be true, and you'll notice that it's always an attempt for power and control. And sometimes it's your own government, like presidents, and other times it's just greedy corporations. So let's start off when presidents lie to start a war. The Gulf of Tonkin incident. This is where they just faked an attack so they could have an excuse to go deeper into war. And knowing that it was fake makes it kind of weird when you're watching the President Johnson's Vietnam address on YouTube. And this next up is Naira's testimony. This was a 15-year-old girl who just described the horrors that were taking place in Iraq. You watch her testimony and it's pretty convincing. But again, it was not real and just used as an excuse to start a war. Next up you have Operation Northwoods. This is where they were planning on, I'm not sure if they were going to kill people or just say they killed American people and then blame it all on Cuba so they could have an excuse again to just attack Cuba. Now, of course, it's not just presidents lying to start wars, it's also about controlling people and controlling what they understand, what they see, what they hear, such as the case of Operation Mockingbird. In this case, the CIA recruited journalists, paid journalists, to just spread whatever messages they wanted. And in this operation, Operation COINTELPRO, the government basically identified groups that they thought were problems, groups that made them look bad, and basically targeted them. They'd sabotage and harass groups that they didn't like, making life a living hell for people like Martin Luther King, or other groups like this, war protesters, feminists. They'd even implant people into these groups in hopes that they would cause conflict and break up the group, or in hopes of them assassinating prominent members of the group. These next examples show how hypocritical these powerful people can be. The war on drugs, turns out that the CIA was actually part of the drug trafficking problem. And man, what they did with Gary Webb, once powerful people know secrets about you, they will do everything they can to discredit you and make your life a living hell. This was one of those examples. And talk about hypocritical, but the Americans brought over a whole bunch of Germans, many of which were leaders of Nazi groups. And this was after World War II. So they fought against that type of crap, and then they ended up bringing people over that supported and encouraged that type of crap. Next up, we have some stuff that really crossed the line. Project MK Ultra. This was some brainwashing, truth serum type experiments. Experiments that had long-lasting effects and are part of class action suits that today. Now what's up with this weather control Operation Popeye stuff? I didn't know weather could be controlled until I saw this. But yeah, they militarized it. They used it in the Vietnam War. They cloud seeded, and I guess it brought more rain, made the monsoons last longer. This made it difficult for them to get supplies or drive their tanks around. I would have never believed that the weather could be controlled in such a fashion. But look at this article on China today. It'll still blow my mind how they can control the weather, but oh well. So it's not only government that does this type of stuff, it's also companies. Groups like the asbestos, lead, and Teflon. But these industries knew their products were harmful. They knew they were harming the people, but they didn't want to give up their cash cows, so they just lied, and took decades for policies to change, for governments to listen, because even governments had their pockets lined. I guess that's why people are up in arms about lobbying power, how these big tech companies have lobbying power, which basically means they can influence laws, influence people in power like presidents and policymakers. So finding out about all of this made me understand a little bit more why people just don't believe what they're told by their government or big corporations. Because there's been a history there, and it's still happening, I know. But at the same time, you don't want to be paranoid and suspicious of everyone and everything, because that does not lead to happiness. So where do you find that balance? How do you make sure you don't go down a rabbit hole? Well, I can't say for certain, but I know that awareness is key. There are psychological, sociological, and emotional principles that rule us whether we know it or not. And if we don't know it, we're more likely to be manipulated and used by people that do. The biggest one is fear. Fear and anger, they distort your perception. So anyone that wants to control you will try to instill fear, make you afraid of something. Also, people have a tendency to believe something that's repeated multiple times, or if it's easier to process. It's called the illusory truth effect. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. Also, humans have a tendency to fall into the confirmation bias. So we just search for information, remember information that supports things we already believe in. That's why it's sometimes good to play devil's advocate with yourself. I'm not an asshole. Well, how about you try proving that you are an asshole, and then see what happens. If you do that, there's less chance of you falling into the circular reasoning that fake conspiracy theories tend to fall into. As for the Great Reset, it's not a secret, so it's not really a conspiracy. It does have conspiracy elements to it, and the potential for conspiracy elements within it, but I'm covering that in a different video. They openly stated their goals, and so then I started thinking, well, anybody that sets goals has an action plan, breaks those goals up into like actionable items. And that's when I started seeing the patterns. So I'd like to end off by saying not everything we believe is true, and not everything we don't believe is false. And that's why, regardless of political affiliation, we need each other. We all need each other.